And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's NBA Observations, everyone. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcasts, inside sports, fantasy football, game source, all that good stuff right there for you. Joe Sorrell, he is lurking around somewhere. And when next time I talk to him, I'm just going to say I heard what he had to say while I was off the air on that glitch that they caused last night. That's okay. Payback. I'll say it's a revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say in the old Klingon proverb. So Joe Sorrell is Oxide 247. There he is in the chat. I heard what you said. I heard what you said behind my back last night. Revenge will be sweet for me. It is, of course, the Lakers Fast Break. Joe Sorrell, you can find him at Simblades with a Y.com, at Oxide47 at LakersBall.com. Our good friends, Laker Tom and Jamie Sweet, hopefully will be by this weekend. They run a site called Lakerholics.com. Our good friend John Costa runs two channels, Lakers Corner and Clutch Talk. The man right below, you need to follow right now on Twitter for all your NBA draft prospect news at report_court. Plus our good friends, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights, John McCalian channel, Empire Jeff TV, and Lakers in 5. All these great channels you can support, but please like, share, and subscribe to us right here at the Lakers Fast Break. We are 1,600 subscribers strong on YouTube, almost 1,000 on Facebook. We need more. We are greedy like that, but we need all your help. No, you said it behind my back, buddy. I've got it on audio, and it's also on YouTube on last night's show. But that's okay. Revenge is coming to you sweet, especially if you like and subscribe right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. Well, the Lakers are continuing to be a part of the news with the ouster of the Cavs. And even though despite Joe's ranting and raving about how it was delirious for the Lakers and us to even talk about it or think about, all the publications and all the radio shows and all the Lakers podcasts are out there are talking about Donovan Mitchell as a possible individual who might be traded or might have a future in LA. But with all that said, yeah, you said him. But we'll go ahead and talk about that here, the possibility of that happening. But this week is the NBA Draft Combine, and Joe Sorrell's favorite draft prospect, Bronny James, seems to be the talk of the entire draft. Is that a prospect of how good he is in actuality, or is it just a product of how bad this draft is? We'll go ahead and talk about that today. Plus, what does it take to really get invested in the NBA Draft Combine? Plus, we prep you for tonight's game, Minnesota and Denver. We'll be on playback.tv/Lakers Fast Break, so join us there. But here today to discuss all the things that are going on this week are two great guys indeed. Sean may join us as well later on. But first up, it is the guy that I wanted to do this show with and who wanted the show today to do with. And it is, of course, the guy at report_court on Twitter. It is Stone Hansen. Stone, glad to have you here. This is a big week for the NBA draft because it does have all the prospects giving out their measurements, starting to compete against each other on 5-on-5s, agility drills, etc., trying to move against chairs and cones and all that good stuff. Your thoughts, my friend? You wanted to go ahead and talk about that process in which you evaluate talent. So I'd love to hear you share those thoughts right now.
Yeah, I think it's just a good thing to go over in regards to what it takes to evaluate players in the process of it, because it's a lot of work, and I think people should have a basis understanding of how it works before they get into draft season, because it's very it's a very it's a time where people latch on to things with very little information, and I think that's something that is probably misleading in a lot of ways, and people have different thoughts and perspectives on guys that are misled because they don't have enough info, and I think that's a big problem in today's draft space, that area. I think it's just a good thing to inform people on um, what the process is of evaluating players. And I'll share mine, but there's many ways of doing it, and everybody has their own.
So, also here today, a good man indeed. It is, of course, a guy who's a great part of our Playback.TV's House Lakers Fast Break crew. It is Laker Nick. And Laker Nick, great to have you here. I know we won't have you on for long, but I wanted to hear your thoughts this week, in regards to the Donovan Mitchell rumors that you're hearing, and B, any thoughts on the NBA draft so far that you've actually been able to ascertain, given what Stone has said, given what everyone else has said about Bronny James or any other draft prospects out there that might be of interest for the Lakers?
Yeah, Gerald, and it's great to be here. Salute to the Magic Man Stone and to you, Gerald. Yeah, I've been following closely what Stone has to say with respect to the draft. And I'm sorry, Joe, but I don't mean to make your blood boil, but I am going to bring up Bronny James here. And actually, I have a question for Stone, since he's a student of this. Um, Stone, in your opinion and in the history that you've been evaluating players, prospects for the NBA, has there been a success story that has the college stats that Bronny James has? 4.8 points per game, uh, less than 20 minutes per game, 26% from three. Is there any success story that you could think of that a player got drafted and actually made an NBA career out of it?
Mm, Not that I could think of off the top of my head, and if there is, it's, I'm sure, an anomaly. I I haven't gone through and looked with those criteria, but yeah, I would say very far and few between, if at all.
Okay. But with that, Nick, what are your thoughts on the draft process so far as the Lakers? Rob Pelinka is there. LeBron James stopped by. Bronny James is there and all that. The Lakers have the 17th and the 55th picks in the NBA draft. Your thoughts on the evaluation going on right now for the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, given the weakness of the draft, as I understand, it's probably the weakest since the Anthony Bennett draft. I don't have high hopes if we do end up drafting players that these players would be able to contribute and obviously contribute immediately to a team that needs to win a championship right away, or maybe just blow it up, right? But if the Lakers are gonna draft, I mean, probably their best interest is going to be to move up in the draft, and that would obviously entail like attaching assets and seeing what they could get. I know that we have a very dire need for a big man at the center position. So I'd actually love to get Stone's thoughts whether there are any viable or good candidates, in the 17th or even 55th spot that the Lakers could snag.
Stone, did you want to go ahead and
Yeah, I, I haven't gotten down to 55 yet. I have a lot of work still to do in the last month. I'm not going as deep as I have in the past because it's not really my job anymore. But I think the guy I would really target, if you're targeting a big, would be Dayron Holmes. That's probably the guy I'd want most at that pick. Uh, and I do not like the prospect of just drafting for fit. I think that's a flawed way to look at drafting. If you're just purely drafting for positional need, because most rookies are going to be bad, that's just how it goes. There's every year 5 or 6 that are actually positives for their team, but for the most part, it's going to take a little bit to be that. I think Holmes is definitely the pick there for me, out of the bigs, likely to be in that range. I like him far more than Filipowski or Ware or Edie or any of those sort of guys. I actually have him above Klingon, who most people have as like a top 6 to 10 guy. So I'd be pretty happy with him if we kept the pick.
I want to go ahead and get Sean. I'll keep you on the standby because Laker Nick is leaving here in just about 7 minutes. So, Laker Nick, I want you to absolutely, if you can, just touch on any other questions that you wanted to get with Stone on, or did you want to go ahead and touch on the Donovan Mitchell rumors before you head on out?
Yeah, I have with respect to Donovan Mitchell, I have to agree with Joe. It does seem like clickbait. But then again, it seems like the Cleveland Cavaliers are heading into a direction where they might have to part ways with some of their players. I did see a rumor today regarding Jared Allen. Some teams are interested in him. The Lakers are not one of those teams that were mentioned, but that name might actually percolate and we might be hearing more about him. But with respect to the draft, I mean, I defer to Stone on that, and I'm really looking forward to see what the next month or so has in store for the Lakers as far as a coach. We know that apparently Coach K is involved in the consulting process there, and we'll see if they make a good decision, if we get a good coach or if we get a podcaster.
Excellent point indeed, my friend. But it's always great to have you here. And I'm looking forward to hopefully having you on later tonight when you can come back on with us on playback.tv/Lakers Fast Break. Able to make the game tonight, Minnesota and Denver?
I'll be around. I know Magic Man will be around. I'm just kidding. I don't know if he will be, but we'll be around, Gerald, and we'll make an effort to be there with the crowd. And it's always a good time to see the game and check it out.
I appreciate it, my friend. Once again, it is Laker Nick. Truly great to have you. Any last questions, Nick, before you head on out?
Yeah, I would actually like to ask Sean about if he. I know that Sean keeps up more with the draft than I do. Sean, with respect to the big men that are or might be available in the draft, do you concur with Stone, or would you have a different big man in mind?
No, actually, I agree with Stone. And it's kind of funny. I think a few months back, Deron Holmes' name came up, and Stone went into a deep dive, greater detail about his game. And yeah, I'm a big fan of him too. So I mean, if the Lakers did grab him, I think that would be a hit, Nick.
Okay. What about someone like Zach Edey, who has risen up draft boards? I talked about it yesterday, Stone, and I want to get Laker Nick involved here before he heads on out because I know he has only 5 minutes left. But Zach Edey has risen up draft boards. This time last year, he was maybe in 50 to 55 was where I saw his number usually pop up on mock draft. When he started the college year, this year, he was in the mid to late 40s. He is actually right around the time of the tournament, which always happens. You see people rise up the charts that actually get extended stays in the tournament there, Stone. And with his measurements being an inch taller than he was last year, and the agility drills that he did and shooting drills, not half bad compared to Donovan Clingan, who's considered by many to be a top 5 pick. Your thoughts on Zach Edey, the 7'5", 300-pounder that, again, a lot of people, I know that Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation, he recently took him in a mock draft. But your thoughts, Stone, on the possibility of Zach Edey becoming a Los Angeles Laker at number 17?
Yeah, I think that he is a bad pick at 17 is what I would say.
That's what I was concerned with, because when those guys that rise up the charts so much, you got to say to yourself, really, how far is too far up?
I'll say that I haven't gotten to as many guys as I want yet, but about 30, 35 guys in, and I start with the top names, so it's only going to get, lesser and lesser talent, I'd assume, as I watch more guys. But I have maybe 13 or so players that I view as like actually worth the first round pick. After that, to me, it's a class full of more second round caliber players. So, and Edey is one of them. I would not be really interested in drafting Edey at 17. I think that he's I talked about him for like 40 minutes on our last Upside Swings podcast, but he's someone that is like really fundamentally sound, but he's got a lot of flaws, and people compare him to Boban. I think he's better than Boban was as a prospect, but he's also he's a situational backup is what it comes down to, in my opinion. And to be a situational backup is not somebody not something I'd be interested in taking at pick 17.
Once again, it is the Lakers Fast Break. It is Laker Nick, Stone Hansen, and Magic Man Sean Grice. Gerald Glassford, thanks so much again for watching this. We truly appreciate it. Laker Nick, again, I truly appreciate you stopping by. I know we're going to have you only here for a few seconds longer. Any last thoughts before you head on out, my friend?
No, thanks for having me, Gerald. No, and I agree with Stone. I'd say to state the obvious with Edie, I guess the main attractive point there is going to be his size, right?
Yes.
It's hard to come by with like a 7'4" or 7'5"
Yeah,
person.
he grew an inch, so he's closer to 7'5".
Yeah, and I mean he did put up stats in college, so he has that going for him. And if he could provide serviceable, a 10-minute or 15-minute window for an NBA team as a rookie, then I think that's probably worth a gamble. But again, I defer to Stone as to the ultimate conclusion there.
Well, there you go. There you have it. Laker Nick, great to have you here again. Please stop by whenever you can, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts tonight on playback.tv/Lakers Fast Break, my friend. Looking forward to it.
You too, Gerald. Take care, Stone, and Magic Man. Have a great show.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
All right, bye.
All right, Magic Man Sean Grice. So we get to you, my friend. And so I ask you, how does Zach Edey appeal to you? Because, when it comes to what we're seeing with the draft, the names that are sparking interest, that are sparking any kind of interest, seem to be related to Zach Edey and Bronny James. I know Stone has some really sound reasoning why you shouldn't take him that high, but I'm assuming the temptation and the fact that he's rising up draft boards is not without consideration, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, Gerald, you can't teach size, so that's the obvious. But you can't really improve foot speed if you don't have any to begin with, right? It's not as if somebody can get him in the gym and find a set of wheels that Purdue, get them mixed up, Purdue couldn't find. So it's not as if he's going to be hell on wheels out there. I think, like Stone has said, I think the foot speed is going to be an issue in the NBA. Things happen fast. In the playoffs, like Stone said, situationally, if he's 7'4" and you throw it into the mid post or down low, those are high percentage looks for that guy. Or he can pass it out to off of doubles. Other than that, I think as far as regular season goes, it's going to be probably tempered. Like you're going to have him on a minutes restriction. Didn't you find that as the game got on longer, Stone, and ZD played longer, it seemed like his stamina suffered as a result?
Yeah, I think. There's times where he's going to be nothing on transition. There's times he just sits on the other end of the court while four teammates go. But also, I think you have to get to I'm trying to remember, but he had one of the highest usages in college. He's constantly being fed the ball and doing things offensively. He's playing heavy minutes, and he's 300 plus pounds. So that's a lot to ask for a guy that big. Obviously, he's going to be scaled down in the NBA. I don't think people expect him to be playing 30 plus minutes for most teams and scoring 25 points a game. But I think that he's going to be not an every night rotation player. I think that for me, he projects more as like someone that if he does stick in the NBA, I'm not saying he will or will not, but projects more as, some nights he plays, some nights he doesn't. And when he does play, it's more like 10, 12 minutes a game than it is 2025. So that's the way more I view Edie.
What teams do you think he would fit best on, Stone, off the top of your head?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a big deficiency of backup bigs in the NBA right now. I think that the talent pool is not very big at the moment. I don't know. I mean, I think any team is probably fine because it's not really changing how your team plays if you're not playing that many minutes. I don't think it's really like changing the direction of which way your franchise goes. So to me, there's not. It's not like there's glaringly great or bad fits with him, in my opinion.
So how does he differ from, let's say, a Donovan Klingon, who's a little bit more defensive oriented, almost as big as he is? I mean, there's size difference between the two is, I don't want to say marginal, but it's close. I mean, Donovan, I think, comes about 7'2", 280, 275, 280, I believe it's from what I remember. And he also has a lot of the gifts, especially on a defensive perimeter, that maybe Edie does not. But agility-wise and tested out-wise during this week, they were a lot closer than I was led to believe from what I saw this season in college.
Yeah, I mean, the first obvious thing is Klingon's like a full 2 years younger. That's a huge difference in the draft space. Also, I think Edie's a bad passer. I think Klingon's a very good passer. I think that Klingon just has more and I don't love Klingon's offense, to be honest. I think a lot of it's reliant upon scheme and teammates cutting. But I think that he's more conducive to post scoring in the NBA than Edie probably is. He's way better defensively because he can play drop effectively, possession to possession. He's limited in the fact that I think he's drop exclusive defensively. I don't really project him to be versatile within a lot of different schemes, but that's part of the reason I'm a little lower on him. But I think that he's way better at timing as a shot blocker defensively. He's, I think, stronger as a rebounder. Edie is huge and he's big, but I think Klingon just he tends to use his size more typically, at least defensively. Offensively, I'd say Edie has the edge on that end. But yeah, I think Klingon just has more NBA level skills than Edie does, and that's why there's probably a huge, probably at least 4 or 5 tier difference between them for me.
One of the things I did want to ask is we saw Cam Whitmore last year fall down in the draft, and obviously Joe and I, during the course of the show and during the course of the months afterwards, that's one of the few things that we ever agree on, is the fact that the Lakers blew it and their opportunity to not get him and drafted the Jalen Hood-Schifino disaster instead. So with that being said, is there anyone that you see that might be primed for a type of fold? Have you heard anything as far as some bad interviews, maybe some health concerns that might cause? I know Terrence Shannon is probably the one name that I would know off the top of my head that is having some issues, off the court issues, that is probably going to preclude him from being drafted higher than maybe he is deserving to. But any thoughts of any individuals that might slip down in the draft that the Lakers might be interested in at number 17?
I mean, I don't really have, or not that I haven't really paid attention to any intel. I just don't have the time really to go in depth of. I also just don't have like the resources to go in depth of character and all that sort of stuff and health. I don't have access to that. I never have, but I would hear things more prominently years past than I do this year because I just don't have the time to pay attention to it as much. Guys that are falling, this draft could go so many ways. I think that it's so difficult to pinpoint. I mean, even last year, I don't think most people expected, or anyone really expected, Whitmore to fall to 19, and that seemed like a draft that was going to be way more chalk than this year headed into it. So I have no clue what'll happen in this draft. Guys that typically seem to be mocked lower than how I view them is like Collier. I have Collier top 3 on my board, and typically he's in that like 13 to 15 type range, 12 to 15 type range.
He was there once, Stone. In the top 3.
Yeah. And I still have him very high. So that's someone that I think would fall relative to where I have them. Holland, it seems like a lot of people now are talking about him as a top 3 guy, when a few weeks ago was more of like a back end top 10 guy. So I don't know. I don't know how this draft will go. And there's guys that I think are gonna fall relative to how I view them, but I've been wrong before and can be very much wrong again.
Magic Man, anything for Stone Hansen?
Yeah, Stone. Not that I put too much stock into the national basketball media anymore. However, Ryan Russello knows his stuff, and on his pod he recently said that he's spoken to about 8 different executives on a half dozen teams, and the word through the ether is that while it is a weak draft, it's almost as if the top pick could be a comp to, say, a Derek Lively or a Tobias Harris. So if we're talking about a draft that's relatively this weak, would you expect a lot of teams maybe looking to trade out of the first round and accumulate more draft capital, say in 25, 26?
There's 3 points I'll make on what you just said. The first is that there's going to be a lot of rumors of teams wanting to do that, but it takes 2 to tango, and doesn't mean that everyone's going to want to trade in. If everyone wants to trade out, that means that there's not everyone's going to be trying to trade in also. The other point I'll make is I'd be very skeptical. This just is in general of people saying what they're hearing from scouts or what they've talked to people in front offices. I'm not saying this is a blanket statement for 100% of people that talk like that or say that, but a lot of times it's trying to be put out there for a reason. There's back end incentive as to why they're saying things, and not it's not just what they're hearing exclusively. So I pay very little attention to what people say that they're hearing, because a lot of times it tends to be there's angles that we don't see publicly as to why they're saying what they're saying. And the other thing I would say is from what I have seen, I would strongly disagree with the fact that the number 1 pick is that bad. It's the weakest draft I've evaluated in 9 years, but the top of the draft, even though the quantity is not at what it's been in the past, I still think there's 3, maybe 4 players that could be perennial all-stars. Probably not all NBA types, in my opinion, but that's not to say that these are just starting level players. I think there's players that can have the opportunity to go way beyond that. So I think typically there's maybe 8, 9 guys that you could see as perennial all-stars in most drafts. In this class I see 2 or 3, maybe 4, but it doesn't mean that their ceiling is as high as a Tobias Harris. For me, I disagree with that.
Easy. It is going to be very interesting what the Spurs are going to do. I agree with you on that. Magic Man, I got you off mute.
Oh, thanks, Gerald. Yeah, I just had a follow up to that. And Stone, I know you said you haven't really gotten into the weeds yet, but just in general, if you could maybe elucidate the rest of us on a couple diamonds in the rough, and then a couple guys who maybe fit the bill of don't believe the hype just yet.
Go ahead, Stone. Gotcha.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No
We're all
worries.
messing up the mutes today. I mean, diamond in the rough type guys, because I just don't think that second round is that talented in this class. I would say I'm really into Jalen Tyson. That's probably a guy that I see very often marked as like late first round. For me, I have him like top 10. I think that he's just a guy that really impacts winning basketball. And that's the sort of player I want, especially in a class like this. Like I feel very confident that Jalen Tyson will be a rotation level player. And in this class, that's to me a top 10 level player. Devin Carter's another guy. A lot of people in the circles that I'm in really like him. I don't think he's super high in like ESPN type rankings, but I think that he's someone also I would take lottery in this class who I just feel very comfortable saying will be an NBA rotation player. Um, so those are, I guess, maybe the diamond in the rough type guys. Guys, I strongly disagree with. Nikola Topic is typically a top 3 prospect for most people. I don't think he's a top 20 prospect in this class.
Plus, there was a injury scare with his knee that happened, I think, last week.
He's had knee injuries all year,
Okay.
off and on. But I don't know what I'm missing with him in regards to what other people say. The other guy that I am very I don't even know why he's considered an NBA prospect, and that's going to sound way more mean than it's meant to. But he's mocked. Today it came out. People were looking at him as a top 8 guy. Was Tijon Salon? I don't think he's even an NBA prospect in my opinion. I think Bronny James is a better prospect than him, but I don't understand why people view him as a prospect.
All right, fair enough. There's some interest there. And speaking of Bronny James, his biggest supporter has just arrived.
See, that's why we love Stone. He's not afraid to go there.
Yeah, he is. Bold take indeed. It is, of course, Joe Soro. Joe is here. Joe, did you have anything for Stone on your favorite Bronny James or any of the draft choices that in and around the number 17 spot for the Lakers, Joe?
I heard his preferred choice at 17 if in terms of the possible big men that are available at that slot. I think the important question now is there a player in this draft that could be available at that spot that could come in and immediately impact winning? That's really the most important question. And while we do have a need for a big man, it's always dangerous, especially that late in the draft, to need versus best player available. So my question to Stone is there a player that can be picked late in the teens that could be an impact player? Someone like Triple J from Miami, Podgajewski. Is that how you say it? I keep asking the same question. Pajemski, sorry. Pajemski. I remember Lively in the last year's draft before he got picked. I think it was 12 by Dallas. I remember I was thinking about him during that draft, and it's just unfortunate that he couldn't last as long as he did. And for all we know, we don't know if they would have picked him anyways. But that's the kind of player I'm wishing that the Lakers could get in terms of immediate impact. Is there a player out there that could do that? Maybe, I should say could. Everybody could, but likely if they pick him.
I think there's 2 points to make on that. The first point I would say is, at least everyone has their own what's called I don't know how many people watching are super familiar with draft lexicon and terminology, but people have their typical philosophies on what they view as important in ways of thinking about the draft. And so I think for me, the philosophy I've developed over the years is I think it's the wrong way to look at, and this isn't directed necessarily at Joe, just I'm stating my own philosophy, that I think the wrong way to look at the draft is who's the quickest to help a team. Because I think when you do that, oftentimes when teams do that, they end up losing out on longer term value because they wanted short term relief. When you look at the Pacers, they did this with Chris Duarte. He had a really hot rookie season, and now he's out of the rotation for the Kings. There's Walker Kessler, was someone that came in as a shot blocker. Now he plays less than 20 minutes for the Jazz. I think there's more value in saying what can this guy do for us long term than what can he do for us in his rookie year. For me, guys that I think can offer both two guys I already mentioned were Jalen Tyson and Devin Carter. I think those guys are. I'm leaning. There's older players in this draft that I typically am not putting as high as I am, but in this class I am, just because I feel confident that they will be NBA players. So Jalen Tyson and Devin Carter are two guys I think can be and Day'Ron Holmes as well. Those are guys I think can be rotation NBA players early on in their careers and be performing in terms of winning basketball. They're helping you win games, and that's not something that's very typical for rookies, but it's something that I project for them to do throughout their career. And because they're older, maybe they can do that more as rookies than an 18 or 19-year-old typically would do. But for me, I tend to view the best player available as the guy who will help your team once they hit their peak, not from where they're starting at.
So with that said, and I'm going to bring back to Magic Man here in a minute, but I know you wanted to make some time to go over the scouting process and what goes into it and what you learned over the years, because I want you to go ahead and explain this to people before they say, oh, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know. It is not as perfect science. I mean, these guys, whether you draft them at 1 or 60, it's not always a perfect science about how it fits and how it works or doesn't work. Obviously there's the individual himself. There's also the environment that he's in, the platform to succeed, et cetera, but I want to hear your thoughts on your whole entire process, how you've been doing it over the course of years when you were really, really into it for several years, and what that process goes into it, to give everybody an idea of why you spend so much time doing it and why the results that you have, for the most part, have been what they are.
Yeah, this is my 9th draft, and I would say the first 3 or 4, I really didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. I mean, I had some idea because I knew basketball, but knowing basketball doesn't innately make you good at evaluating prospects and how they will perform in the NBA. I'm still learning. I always tell people that if you ever think you're done learning, and this probably is applicable to most things in life, but especially in the draft, if you ever think you're done learning with drafting, then you've plateaued. You've taken a wrong turn, because there's always more things to learn from it and from your mistakes. And I try to take that and apply it to the next draft as to how can I be better and what can I learn from why I missed on this guy. So I think the big thing, the number one thing at the start, I've had just over the course of the years that I've done this, not because I'm super smart, it's just because I've done it for a long time. I've had a lot of people reach out to me that, especially in the last couple of years, that are younger than me, and even younger than when I started, and are asking, like, what do I do? How do I start doing this? And I tell a lot of people, the first thing is, don't start with highlights. Everyone that is casually watching the draft, and there's nothing wrong, and I make that clear, that there's nothing wrong with casually watching the draft. Not everyone has the time to evaluate the draft and put that sort of time into it. I understand that. I do it as I have a full-time job, but I also do it because I just like it, and I use that as like my second full-time job. And not everyone has that sort of time or interest in doing it. So don't ever start with highlights, because you only see the best of players, and that's the wrong way to do it, because there's a lot of flaws in every player, and I don't want to harp on the fact that a player has flaws. I don't want to like tear them down, but it's important to be objective and say, what do they do good and what do they need to improve on. I think earlier on in my scouting, I did a lot of what are they good at right now, and I didn't think of how fixable are the issues that they have as flaws. I think that's an important thing. When you look at a player, I think you have to consider how fixable are the issues that they have. That's something I've really harped on. I think the past like 3-4 years is like, ball handling. It's a very difficult thing to improve upon, especially when you're older. Shooting is a little bit easier. Footwork is something that can be fixed. So there's different things that have different levels of fixability and how easy they are to fix. Age is a big thing. Excuse me, I'm going to grab some water.
Age is a big thing, of course. Obviously people
Getting a little choked up,
these teams want to develop players earlier the
I just
better.
had chips and they're getting stuck in my throat. Sorry.
Well, unless they're a ready to win team now. If they're in that mode, Stone, then they're obviously you're looking for older players that are more likely to be able to contribute right away, as opposed to developing a player that might work out in the long term. Is that correct?
For some teams, yeah. I think that age is a factor because a lot of people that more casually watch the draft, I think tend to think that the older a player is, the more ready they are to contribute to a team. I don't think that's the case 100% of the time, and I think typically being younger is an advantage because when you watch basketball, the ages of like 14 to 22 are like the biggest developmental years of what you become as a basketball player for your career. And like the past couple of years, guys have missed a couple of years because of COVID. So when they're in high school, that played a part in your evaluation because you missed 2 pivotal developmental years that you didn't have, and you have to make up in a quicker amount of time. So when you are between 14 and 22, that's like your most developmental years. When you're coming in the league at 22, you have less room to grow at an NBA level than you do when you're 18. And that is, going to be a factor, a big factor. I think the other thing that people should realize is that it's very easy to, and I get accused of this a lot, and I don't take offense to it because when I first started, I was the same way. But it's very easy to say that people are wrong when they have different opinions than what the consensus is. Like, for example, I just said I don't have Topic as a top 20 player in this draft. Everyone has him top 3. That's not, I'm not doing it because I want to be different or get clicks. I'm doing it because that's what I see. And I could be wrong. I've been wrong on those sort of things before, but I think it's important to listen to why people have those opinions and then just write them off and say that they're crazy. Because typically people that have those opinions are doing it because they've watched a lot of film and they just come away with a different opinion. And a lot of people, when I first started, had those sort of opinions, and I was like, these guys are crazy. Like they had James Wiseman outside the top 20. I was like, what? And then that class, I ended up watching a lot of James Wiseman, and I ended the year with him outside my top 20 because I ended up agreeing with them and I didn't see it. And so I think it's important to have an open mind as to why people have different opinions.
Magic Man? Oh, got to put
Yeah.
there you go. I got you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Stone, follow up to Gerald's question there, because I thought your thesis on what you've learned throughout the process of being a scout is extremely interesting. And I know you're not a big football fan, Stone, but Al Davis, who was the former owner of the Oakland Los Angeles Raiders, he was a scout himself before he was a coach, before he was an owner. And he would often say that the biggest factor he learned in scouting was that he learned to siphon through a lot of junk and focus on great prospects and what they did against other great prospects. So in other words, steal on steal. Like, have you learned that that's more of a predictor of how well somebody may do on different levels of basketball is that how well they perform against like-minded competition or equal competition, and how that is maybe a predictor for how they perform.
To a degree. So a lot of guys are playing different levels of basketball, especially when you start getting into international scouting. Um, it's very easy when you watch after a few games of each league to determine, okay, which leagues are more talented, which leagues lean more physical, and you sort of have to siphon out how does that apply to the NBA, not necessarily how, or you can't look at what a player does against their league and just immediately extrapolate that they're good at what they do because they're good at doing it in their league. You have to be able to say, okay, can they do this against NBA competition? That's a big factor. I have Topic a lot lower. I think that what he does is very good for the Adriatic league that he's in, but when you have a different way of playing and different athletes, athletic levels in the NBA, I think it gets a lot harder for him. So you have to factor things like that in. Another player in that past was Pokashevsky. He was playing Division II Greek basketball, and a lot of people had him like top 5 because he was a ball handler in that league who can shoot, pass, and was 7 foot, but he wasn't doing it to the same level when you're put against NBA competition. In college, most players are coming from college. They play in different conferences, so you're playing different levels of basketball, even within college basketball, because like the Big 12 typically is, or even in the past, the Pac-12, when they were the Pac-12, were worse conferences than like the SEC. So you're getting worse competition night in and night out, but you have to sort of take that into consideration in your evaluation of how does this apply to the NBA, not how does it apply against their peers. I think that's the thing I've learned is it's not what they do against their peers, it's can they also do it in the NBA.
Joe, anything for Stone?
Do you think that Stephen Castle could be the best player of this draft when it's all said and done?
No, and I'm lower on him than a lot of people.
So you don't think his defensive prowess, and if he develops an offensive game, you don't think that he could end up being the all-around player? And he's coming from a winning kind of mentality. A lot of times that's not put into, I feel like a lot of times, especially with the NCAA basketball area, the winning part, the consistent winning, doesn't get put to the front a little more, because look at the boys from Villanova. Look what they're doing in New York. A lot of that is because they have this thing with winning, and you combine them like Voltron, and here you got the best Knick team since 1999 in my book.
Yeah.
And I know that's a hard one too, because let's say he gets picked second, he's going to there's really 3 Siberias in the NBA. One is Minnesota, one is Charlotte, and the other is Washington. Even though Washington's considered kind of a big market, but going to Washington, can anybody resurrect that sorry excuse of an NBA team ever?
Well, okay, so I'll address the winning thing first, and then I'll get to Stefan right after that. As far as the winning thing, it's difficult because, like you said, you have the Villanova guys right now. That's a winning mentality. When almost all these prospects are coming into college, they've all won to the highest degree in high school because they're the best of the best in high school. And typically they're the best on their team in high school. They're winning state championships, regional championships. They're all typically on the same winning level once they get to college. When they get to college, it's a different story. I tend to not factor it as much because I think it's really difficult to get a feel for that unless you know these guys personally. I do not. I don't know what their training habits are. I don't know what their eating habits are. I don't know what their dedication levels are. Usually it's a decent indicator if they're winning a lot that they're all very good things. But I can't bank on that because I can only see what's in front of me. I can't just guess. So, and then you look at a guy like Ochai Agbaji, who was a 2-time champion for Kansas. and now he's like out of the rotation for the Raptors. There's winning, I think, has levels to it. I don't think it's a linear thing that if you won a lot in college, you're also going to win a lot in the NBA. Zach Edey went into very deep runs with Purdue. Was National Player of the Year twice. Like, he's really good at basketball at the college level, but that doesn't automatically make him a good NBA player. It's just it is relative to competition. As far as Castle, we haven't talked about him yet on upside swings, but I've done some. I've watched him a lot, and the conclusion I came away with was he's a good defender. He's a really good defender. I don't think he's the elite defender that people make him out to be, in my opinion. I think that offensively he's skilled. A lot of people have pointed me towards his high school film. I just don't have the time this year to watch high school like I used to. But he was a really good passer, from what I've been told in high school. But that doesn't, like I just talked about with Klingon, that doesn't automatically make you like a point guard or really good as a playmaker, because you can be a really good passer. It's just you're not creating those angles yourself. You have to rely upon other people to create angles for you to get those passes. So there's a lot of things to factor in and consider. I don't buy his shot at all. I think the shot is not good, and I think that's why I'm a lot lower on him than most people. I don't buy it developing. That's just my opinion. And so I'm lower on him than a lot of people. And I think that I probably won't have him top. I won't have him lottery, I don't think, in this class.
So with that in mind, and once again, it is the Lakers Fast Break. It is Magic Man Sean Grice, Joe Soro, and Stone Hansen from @report_court. Gerald Glassford, thanks for watching this thing. The I don't want to say just the guy in the room. I guess the guy that everybody seems to be talking about in Chicago is not Alexander Sarr. It's not Stephon Risacher. It's not any of the other draft picks or candidates that are around there. It is one LeBron James Jr. And as much to Joe's chagrin, as much to my chagrin about his realistic prospects, the fact that he just keeps going, the people, the individuals that just want to push that narrative out there about him rising up draft boards or being a prospect in the NBA, he tested out to 6'1.5" without shoes, reaches about 6'7". Your thoughts on this, my friend? He has proven himself to be pretty adequate. He's done okay this week. Pretty good as far as his overall stats, as far as what jumped out at you, as far as athletic drills, his vertical leap, top 10 vertical leap in this year's class. He scored 13 points the other day in the combine, 5-on-5. It shot well from the three-pointer in that competition that they had as far as that testing earlier this week. Your thoughts, my friend? Nothing I've heard that's been really bad. But then again, we're talking about a player who averaged 5 points this past year, could really use more time, in our opinion, at USC, but has chosen, and it's looking like he's choosing to bypass that for an NBA future.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. There's a lot of different angles to talk about. I have a lot of thoughts about a lot of things, especially when it comes to basketball. But I think the first thing I want to say is I think it's wrong for people to just view him or for ESPN typically and these big outlets to just be blasting his name off of this. Everyone that wants him to do great is because they're going to be profiting off of him, and I think that's wrong. I think these are all companies and organizations and people that are pushing for him for the wrong reasons, and I think that it's wrong to do that because even though I don't view him as a great prospect, I've been open about that in the past.
Well, let's say he's Joe Smith, not that Joe Smith,
yeah,
of course, but let's just say he's Joe or Frank Smith or whatever basic name that you want to say. Let's say it's not LeBron James Jr. coming into this draft. coming off the combine, seeing the numbers that you're seeing, how would you evaluate him from there?
The same as I would that he's Bronny Jr.
Okay.
Not
Which
a
is
not a very good prospect. This class is so bad that I think I might end up with him top 60, but I don't think that that's indicative of him being an NBA level player. I just think that this class is very bad. But what I will say is that he didn't get to D1 basketball just because of his name. That obviously helped him. I'm not going to deny that, but you have to have some level of dedication and hard work to be able to get to that point. You don't just get there by waking up and going to games like that. That's just not how it works. And to reduce all of that to just how much can you sell in jerseys, I think is wrong. For like ESPN and these other places that are pumping him night in and night out, I think it's doing a disservice to him because it's reducing all of his work to his name. I think it's doing a disservice to all the other guys that are probably playing better than him. I mean, to be blunt, at this combine, these guys are getting less coverage because Bronny has a bigger last name, and I think you're reducing that. There's a lot of angles to this that I think are wrong for covering him for all the wrong reasons, and I think that needs to be addressed. I also think that I don't view him as a very good NBA prospect. I think that he's Kostas Antetokounmpo made the NBA because he's Giannis's brother. Bronny will have a better chance of making the NBA because he's LeBron's son, but I think he's a better prospect than like Kostas was as an NBA player. Like I think he's still a good basketball player. I think he's a Division I level basketball player. I don't think he's an NBA player. I don't think he'll succeed in the NBA. Most guys that score 5 points in the NBA don't, or in college, I mean, don't succeed in the NBA. But I think that he is better than what people are giving him credit for. I think he'll have a successful overseas level career, and that's hard to do. A lot of guys don't even do that. So if you can do that, I think you'd consider that a success because you can make a living doing the sport you love. But I don't think he's an NBA level player, but I think reducing him down to jersey sales is just wrong for like ESPN and people to do.
Joe, you wanted to interject? Oh, go ahead, Sean. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I was gonna eloquently stated, Stone. It's almost as if this whole situation has a backdraft effect. Like it's sucking all the oxygen out of this draft. I mean, there's a bigger and better story in this draft than Bronny James, and that's DJ Wagner. DJ Wagner is going to be the third generation NBA player. That's never happened before in the NBA. His grandfather, Milt Wagner, won a championship with the Los Angeles Lakers. He didn't play much, but he was on the team. He's got a ring. His dad was a very good NBA player despite his injury history, DeJuan Wagner. DJ Wagner is getting nothing right now. Nothing. And that is an indictment, like you said, on ESPN and all these outlets who are just sucking the oxygen out of this draft.
Joe, I mean, I can't say I disagree with the guys. I mean, I don't see him and view him as an NBA prospect, but it's becoming clearer and clearer that a lot of people, for whatever reasons they want to go ahead and put into it, are trying very much hard to.
Well, I think the difference between Kostas and Antetokounmpo, I can never say it right, and let's say Bronny James is that one is what 6'7", 6'8".
Yeah, Kostas was like 6'6". Thanasis
yeah.
is like 6'7".
Okay, so sometimes height can get you a job, and we've seen that up close and personal. Rob Sacre is the bulletin board guy on that one, a 7-footer from Gonzaga who couldn't play. Nice guy, but couldn't really play. Blaming ESPN, blaming executives, blaming hacks. That's status quo at this point because that's what non-talented, greedy scumbags do. They value money over development. They value money over 19-year-old psyche. But more than that is it's LeBron's son. LeBron has a lot of say in this, and he's allowing it. And then what will happen if this goes south and there's a lot of criticism, and there's already been criticism, is then there's a defensive mode from it. It's like someone who smokes for 30 years and then blames the cigarette company because they're sick. Oh, well, they didn't tell us. Who's they? Who's they when you say they didn't tell us? You really think tobacco executives are going to tell you, don't do this? Did you really think that doctors, under the guise of owners trying to make money, keep their teams at that time, guys like Tex Schramm, Al Davis, the Rooneys, whatever, back in the 70s when it wasn't, there weren't TV contracts like there are now. You think those guys were going to tell their doctors, hey, don't put Franco Harris back in? He got his bell rung? Hell no. So if you're going to be stupid and naive and defensive when a bunch of strangers who don't give a shit about their own families, their own friends, their own marriages to care about you, then you're dumb and you deserve whatever comes to you. And that's just the fact of life. This charade is exactly that. And it's sad because I'm trying not to criticize the kid. This is not a criticism to the kid. He looks like a pretty mild-mannered person. And he comes from what looks like a nice guy relative in terms of like personality in LeBron, and looks like his mother's kind of quiet and nice as well. Well, this is what you have. You have someone who's not as demonstrative, doesn't seem to kind of create any attitude, publicly at least. Yet we're sitting here discussing a 6'1", not very swift-footed. Yeah, he's got some vertical, but I can go down the street right here and show you a couple guys that can jump out the building too, that play at the park. You know, some guys are gifted like that. Some guys can jump out the gate. But there's too much wasted energy on something like this. And the reason why it's a problem here is because this team does not have talent to mess around with someone who doesn't have talent, simply so that we can get a feel-good story. I refuse to watch the charade if that happens. Because if you do this, then you're not serious about winning, and LeBron isn't serious about being the greatest of all time or winning championships. What you say means nothing to me. This goes for my family, my wife, my kids, my friends. Doesn't matter who. If you say something and I know it's horseshit, I'm going to call you out on it. Now, if you say something and I'm not aware of what it is, I'll go, all right, well, I don't know what you're doing, but okay, let's see what's up. Then I analyze what's going on. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought you said you were going to do this. Well, yeah, you were lying. You actually were lying. You told yourself you could do this. Matter of fact, I had this discussion recently with someone. I told them, I go, you're not about this business. And when you tell someone straight up to their, I didn't say it to their face, but I said it in the conversation on the phone. I said, you're not it. And I tried to convince you not to do this at the beginning. Guys, time wasting is not going to happen. I'll sit and watch TV sometimes, and I'll get mad at my own self for watching TV because I just wasted time. That's how the brain works sometimes. But at the same time, you're in that mode of your mind is constantly going. You need something to slow it down. That's why I pass out every night. If I didn't pass out every night, the tires would come off. So at least I got that. But the thing is, the sad thing about this story is, before I finish off this charade that we're dealing with here is by not being hungry all the time, you start getting complacent. And that's the curse of trying to be in constant moving forward and getting better. You're never really satisfied. Kobe Bryant, the one negative he had in his training, and this is coming from the forgot his name. He does like TED Talks now, explaining the difference between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. He trained Michael. He
Subscriber,
trained Kobe.
huh? Cool.
He said when he told Michael that this is enough, Michael would listen to him. And maybe because Michael had some people in his life, Dean Smith, his father, that had that ability to click into that part of his mind where he's like, guys, Jordan, MJ, come on, you hit 1,000 shots today. Let the body recover. Let your mind, kind of get a little rest. And Michael was good with that. Whereas when he would tell Kobe that, he's like, no, I got to go another hour. No, I got to go another 2 hours. And that's what this is all about. Like, what do we want on this team? We want talent, and we would like to have talent. We're not watching their habits, just like Stone said. We're not seeing if these guys are eating chicken, rice, and broccoli. That's a pretty good sign that someone cares about their diet. That's usually going to mean something, right? But then again, he also said, I don't know either. I've been wrong before. Why have we been wrong before? Even though this isn't technically wrong. Well, we heard as they were drafting Jalen Hood-Schifino that he puts in the work, that he's about the work. Well, that's great, but are you talented to put in the work too? There's a lot of factors in this. And to waste time with one of the big things that you really need, it's really number one that you have to have first, is talent. The NBA division between college and NBA is so big. I don't think most people really can comprehend it. It is huge, bigger than the NFL, bigger than baseball, and bigger than hockey, in my opinion. It is beyond a division between college and the NBA. I mean, just look at professional leagues, the different gaps between the CBA, the Chinese basketball is it association?
The
I think it's
association.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got, European ball.
Maccabi Tel Aviv.
Yeah, it's guys. You got guys. You had Stephon Marbury go to China and become a legend ×2 over there. At what age? 80? Eating Vaseline and all that? Guys, the NBA is no joke, man. And to really grasp how amazing like these LeBron and Kobe's and Jokic's are, man, you'd have to go in there and play. You'd really have to go in there and play. And the Lakers have a lot of work to do. We talked about this a lot last night, and I highly recommend watching the show from last night because we went into a little bit more detail. Today is more of Stone Hansen giving us the 411 on what are the chances the Lakers get a player that can be of relevance, whether it's coming on up in this particular season or something to build off of. And it's sounded like Stone wants something that's similar to how we want this next coach to be. We don't want this to just be a LeBron coach. We don't want this to be just now coach. We need this to be the next 5 years. Otherwise, your product is going to continue to suck. But does it really matter, guys?
Well, I'd rather
people are still going to come and they're still going to do this at the games.
It's the happiest I've seen Joe.
So far as diehards, we're the ones we suffer.
I'd rather give Chris Quinn a shot as a head coach than JJ Redick.
Well, it's nice. It would be nice to go that way because, guess what Chris did last year? He coached
under Eric Spoelstra, by the way.
He coached.
He's an assistant to the best head coach in the NBA, by far. by far. Like there's a gap between Spoelstra and everybody else, and that's just a fact. Even though Miami's out of the playoffs, it's just a fact. And at least it shows that Pelinka's actually paying attention to qualified people and not interviewing ding dongs like JJ Redick.
Do they still make ding dongs?
I'm pretty
Yes,
sure they do.
They do.
What about those red coconut things?
With
That
the
I don't-
velvet,
that's-
I like those ones.
the red
the
velvet.
I
snowballs.
never liked the
Snowballs.
coconut ones, but I thought they always looked funny.
Snowballs, yeah. Those are
Those
good.
looked like a rabbit's tail when I was a kid.
But Joe mentioned something, and before we head on out, and before we head on over to playback.tv/Lakers Fast Break, Stone, I want to ask you this in regards to talent. I know the hottest rumors as Joe Ingles stopped by after his hard series, that they unfortunately Orlando Magic got eliminated from. One of the things that another got eliminated is Cleveland Cavaliers. And of course, with all the Lakers shows and Laker articles, including Empire Jeff's on his Substack, please go ahead and subscribe to his Substack today to check out his latest article and thoughts on a Donovan Mitchell trade, because he is now getting into the Laker Tom fantasy trade business as well. So your thoughts on this, because it's now become a talking point for every Lakers show and broadcast, with the fact that Donovan has not signed an extension as of yet. You mentioned that of the two, you would be more interested in Darius Garland, because what Shams Charania reported minutes after they got eliminated by Boston is that if Mitchell signs an extension, Garland wants nowhere near Cleveland as far as that's concerned. Just want to play anymore with Mitchell alongside of him.
Yeah, well, remember what I said earlier in the show. A lot of reporting has ulterior motives as to why it's being put out.
Oh, I know. Look who's
yeah.
putting it out there, and that's you could start it with that. But
yeah,
I get it.
I'm more interested in attaining Garland for the price that it would cost than Mitchell for the price that he would cost. And to be clear, I don't think the Lakers even have enough to get Mitchell. I don't think
3 ones wouldn't do it for him.
I don't think. I mean, they're further out, and then you have to match salary like is and
Reeves most likely would be
Reeves. Yeah, I mean, are those guys enough to really move them for relative to what other offers they might get? I don't think so. But I would
throw JHS in there. It might be a definite no.
I would rather get Garland. He struggled in the playoffs, but I think people are underselling how big that jaw injury was for him throughout the year. That was massive. When you break and fracture your jaw, that throws your whole equilibrium off, your balance, everything. You're afraid to go near the rim. Like, that's a massive injury. His shooting was off. I think his depth perception was off. So a full off season, I think, of training, he'll be a really good player again next year. I would rather bring him in. I've already heard people are Lakers fans that would be concerned of his defense. Look at what you have currently. I don't think it could get any worse. I think that I would prefer him. Ultimately, though, I would prefer neither. It's not realistic, but my dream is still just start over. I would rather not trade for any of these people and just start over. I would trade away, not bring in.
What do you mean, these people?
These players. I couldn't think of the word fast enough. I meant these players, everybody. But don't cancel me. But I think that Garland is. I think he's a really good player. I think he's like an all-star, all NBA level player. And I think
I watched Tropic Thunder last night. So
it's all good. But yeah, I like Garland.
Okay, because again, with the most likely prospect, Stone, that they will not listen and adhere to your wishes and desires, that they will do what they can to re-sign LeBron James, most likely at a hefty price, that they will most likely try to put some heavy offers in for D'Angelo Russell, whether it is to sign and trade him or retain him or asset management 101, as Joe's talked about. it's just something, Stone, that I think is going to be a reality. But Magic Man, you want to get in here? I mean, he prefers Darius Garland, and I can definitely see why, because the fact that you would need less to get him, Magic Man. But your thoughts on this whole Cleveland situation? Because again, right now, as soon as they got eliminated, it became the talk of Lakers Nation. Go ahead, Match.
Oh yeah, Gerald. Can you repeat the last part of the question?
But just saying, just your thoughts on this whole Cleveland situation, as far as, because
Yeah.
Jared Allen also might come to mind as well,
Yeah,
because they're going to break up that. The backcourt is the one that's getting talked about, but also the front court needs to be split up as well.
yeah. Well, you know something, Gerald. I had mentioned we had talked about something like this happening last summer when we had our Cavs expert on, and we were talking about how Dan Gilbert's son is now basically running the team. Dan suffered a massive stroke, and the it's not no longer a rumor now. It's pretty set in stone that he has very little to do with the day to day operations of his businesses, and he has less to do with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So it's a mess there. I'm not sure what exactly happened that fractured this organization, because it seemed like they were actually moving in a positive direction. Gerald, we had talked about it. That being said, it looks like they're going to deconstruct and start anew from what we've heard. So, um, I don't think we have the um, qualified assets or capital to acquire somebody like Mitchell. I think it would take too much. And even though I like his game and think he would help the team, I think it'd be more of a Trey Young maneuver. It would make the Lakers better, but it doesn't vault them into, uh, being a sleeper or even a contender, in my opinion. I agree with Stone. If you're going to pick the bones off the carrion, I think Darius Garland is the way to go. I really like Darius Garland's game for the reasons I mentioned last night.
That
And
would mean you're
Stone
not
added.
re-signing or going after D'Angelo Russell, Magic Man.
That's correct. And I mean, Gerald, given the binary choice there, who would you take, Garland or Russell?
I'd take Garland.
Garland is, yeah, I would too. He's younger. He's got a little bit more of a scoring touch than just a shooting, than just a shooter. I also think that, again, to reiterate, I think in the right situation, given the spacing, I think he can significantly improve how many times he gets to the line a game. I think that's an underrated aspect. He doesn't really get the calls that he should driving in the paint in Cleveland that say he would if he was a Knick or a Laker or even a Heat. If you could package Jared now, we talked yesterday. I wouldn't give them 3 first-round picks for Garland, but if you're going to include Jared Allen, definitely.
Yeah, I would.
Definitely.
That would probably be something I would do, Joe and Stone. Darius Garland and Jared Allen in a package. Would you include the 3 first? Go ahead.
For both those guys.
I'm not
Yes.
that interested in adding another center to this team that starts as a backup. I like a backup center, but I think it's really obstructing the spacing on the court when you play 2 non-spacing bigs, and it's why you don't see it in the NBA right now. There's no successful team is playing 2 or starting minutes together to non-shooting bigs without one of them being able to defend out on the perimeter. And when AD and Allen are best both as rim protectors, you're taking away one of their best advantages defensively by putting them on the perimeter. Then neither of them can space. So I like Allen a lot. I think he's a very good player, but I don't think he's right for this Lakers team personally.
Once again, it is the Lakers Fast Break. It is Stone Hansen at report_court. Magic Man, Sean Grice, and Joe Sorrell. Joe, any thoughts? Tomorrow, I think we will talk about more potential trade targets that might include the Cleveland Cavaliers, but many others as well that have been talked about and discussed for tomorrow's show. But any more thoughts on this before we head on out? Because we're almost to the game, Minnesota and Denver on playback.tv/Lakers Fast Break.
I don't believe there's going to be any major trades coming LA's way. I don't know why. The only reason, actually, I do know why. There's not anything solid, so just making up stuff so that you can get attention from it is all that's there. The Lakers don't have anything to trade. And if they were to trade something, you risk having 3 players in the married minimums in a league where, if you're not having learned your lesson by now that 3 stars on a team ain't going to win it all, you're never going to learn. It's just the Lakers need to focus on what they can control. Right now, once New Orleans officially makes their pick theirs, you have control over that pick. You have control over the 55th pick. You have control over who you sign in the offseason during free agency in terms of players that are available and willing to take your money. And then you have control over signing LeBron and whether he wants a max or not. We're gonna find out a lot about LeBron and what he takes here. If LeBron takes the max, then LeBron is likely not concerned about winning anymore. He might be thinking, well, I'd rather get the money and then hope we win. And that's it. That's that. Lakers don't have any assets. Three first-round picks, okay. We know that first-round picks in the NBA, once you get past top 3, top 5, it's a crapshoot pick, especially if you play well, then you're picking in the high 20s. To me, there's not a lot of value there typically for a low-rent team like a Charlotte or a Atlanta. What are you going to get out of those? Are you going to get any franchise-altering players there typically? It's like less than 0.02%. So I just don't see how there's a discussion that the Lakers are going to go and all of a sudden find their third guy and now they're going to be able to field a team that's going to go compete for a title. There's too many things have to happen for that to even remotely get close. And the system doesn't allow you to do 90% of it.
Did you want to interject? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. We just don't have enough to get those kind of players. I think we should maybe try and split the assets, bring in someone like a Garland and maybe have enough left over to bring in a DeJounte. Like, I think pairing those guys together would be awesome for the Lakers, and you could split those 3 firsts. Then you have Rui and D'Lo, or more likely Reeves, to try and go after them. And I still even think then you probably fall short. But I would rather go that way of bringing in 2 really good players than one all-NBA type player, because I think, like Joe's saying, it's really tough to win when all your money's tied up with 3 players. And the way the Lakers have built this team, you're at the risk of losing one of your non-star players for nothing on salary that you could have drawn out by making a trade at the deadline. So when your money is tied up in 2 players like that so strongly, it's very important to wisely allocate how the rest of that payroll is going, because when there's such a disparity of it all being at the very top and then the rest is minimums, teams don't work out. You have to have a spread out payroll in order to be successful.
Alan, that's what I discussed yesterday. Is the plan formulating with Rob Pelinka and Jeannie and LeBron? Was he doing that while he was talking with LeBron yesterday in Chicago? We'll see if he is making that wish list now. We'll talk more about that wish list on tomorrow night's show. But Stone, absolutely fantastic to have you here. Before I go ahead and give it to you for the cheap plug before we head on out, Magic Man, any last thoughts before we head on out?
Yeah, Stone, I realize you haven't taken a deep dive. Have you had a chance to watch any film of Peyton Sanford from Iowa? Because he has the potential to be maybe the best shooter out of this draft. I'm not saying he's the best shooter now, but what I am saying is he definitely has NBA ready skills. And I've noticed on some draft boards he's not even in some people's top 60.
Yeah, I haven't had the chance to really dive deep on him yet. I've watched him in the past just peripherally, and he's a very good shooter. But yeah, I haven't watched him this year very deeply. Um,
First junior in 127 years at Iowa to get a triple double.
yeah, I mean, Baylor Shireman is another late pick of the prototypical white guy that can shoot. So there's guys like that. Cam Spencer is going to be if he's in this draft, he'll be a prolific shooter. There's guys late, Tristan Newton, that can really space the floor, but I haven't dove deep into any of those guys yet.
Well, there you have it. But before we head on out, Stone, how can people check out more of your observations? I know you had quite a few earlier today, but how can people go ahead and check out what you're doing and get the up-to-date news on what's going on with your thoughts on the NBA draft?
Yeah, I'm clipping and tweeting a lot. I use clipping games as a way to show people what I'm seeing, and help better explain what I'm seeing. I really enjoy scouting stuff, and so all of that is on at report_court on X. And if you want to hear audio versions of my thoughts, you can go to Upside Swings. We just talked about a lot of the bigs as of late. Yeah, and if people like this, I can come back and talk more draft stuff if people liked the episode.
Oh, always, my friend. We like the episode. That's what's most important stuff. Who cares about the other people that want to listen or right, Joe? It's all about you, right? Right, Joe? It's all about you. You're the audience.
That's who?
Exactly, Joe. Exactly. But Stone, yes, absolutely. We'd love to have you back on. I'm sure the audience out there, our great audience, the best audience that's out there for Lakers thoughts, the Lakers fast break. Always loves to hear what you have to say about the NBA draft going forward, especially because the Lakers do have at least 2 picks. You think there'll be a buyer or a seller to try and go ahead in this year's draft as far as trading down or maybe acquiring another pick to get a certain player?
If I'd be surprised if the Pelicans don't defer this pick to next year, and then I'd be surprised if the Lakers use the pick for a player this year. I think it's pretty likely that the Lakers trade this pick.
Indiana has 3 second-round picks. Just saying.
Yeah, they'll trade all those too, I'd imagine.
That's cool.
Who's going to buy all these picks, Stone, in a bad draft?
Oklahoma
That's what I
City.
want to know.
Yeah, they'll more than likely. I think it'll be teams that have a lot of second rounders in drafts. 2-3 years down the road, and they'll end up just swapping for a team that doesn't have as many second rounders this year, just to move things around, because you can't roster that many guys, or there's just going to be a lot of drafting stashes.
Yeah,
New Orleans needs to do something, because they're about to lose a really good starting center who's testing free agency.
I don't think he's going to be very good for much longer. For what it's
I think
worth.
he's got 1 or 2 years left, but
he's at 32 already.
Jonas Valanciunas is still a solid player in the NBA.
I think he'd be a solid backup. I don't think I'd like to start him anymore, at least for the Lakers.
On that note, we'll see what happens. But it is, of course, the Lakers fast break. Tune in tomorrow. We've got a great show for you. But right now, if you're watching us and go ahead and checking out what we're doing, please hop on over to our playback.tv/Lakers fast break, or the simulcast, because we're now on YouTube and Facebook as well. So for Stone Hansen at report_court, Joe Soro, Oxide47 at LakersBall.com, and Simblades with a Y.com, and Magic Man, Sean Grice, the madman from Toronto. He did get out of Toronto traffic. And big shout out to Laker Nick as well. Thanks so much again for joining us. Joe is always weird with the camera. Yes, he learned from Laker Tom with the Laker Tom lean in there. Yes. So truly appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow and upcoming in the next couple of minutes on playback right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.
What? Shut up.
You shut up.
Why don't all of you shut up?
Why?